It's Tuesday, August 4th, 2009. Welcome into the Morning Swim Show news segment. I'm your host, Peter Busch, and the U.S. Open begins today in Federal Way, Washington. A lot of the top American swimmers that you didn't see at the World Championships started competing this morning in prelims, and we will have the results from the final session tonight on swimmingworld.com. Today on the show, we're going to bring you a clip from my appearance yesterday on ESPN's Outside the Lines. But first, we're making our viewers and readers a big part of today's news segment. Many of the visitors to our website are still talking about the World Champs in Rome, and they're posting their comments using our reaction time feature. And the most talked about race, no big surprise, was the men's 200 free, in which Paul Biedermann from Germany stunned Michael Phelps and the rest of the swimming world. Here are some of the comments you wrote after that race. Username MJH wrote, quote, "If the suits are handicapped as horses are in racing, then Michael swam 141.22 handicapped. He should get the gold medal." And Lycac05 said, quote, "This is a sad day for swimming, that's all I can say. That man would never ever beat Phelps without using the X-Glide. Kudos to Phelps, he did an amazing race and he's still number one." Scott Swim wrote, "Just a small note in defense of Paul Biedermann. I noticed that he swam at Europeans and Olympics without a cap, and in this race he wore one. One additional reason, he would have swum a bit faster." That 100 fly race didn't bring quite as many comments, but still very heated discussion, especially after Michael Cavich broke the world record in the semifinals. After that race, Max Argy wrote, quote, "Phelps is no match for Cavich. Cavich is going to break 50, and Phelps will have to go below 23.4 to have a chance." Well, Max, you were right and wrong on that one. Phelps' first half split was 23:36, so you saw that coming. But obviously wrong that Phelps was no match. You and I both erred in that prediction. Interestingly enough, the story that had the most comments after the men's 200 free was the women's 800 free relay, in which China outlasted the Americans for the gold medal. Swimming fans will remember that the 1994 Worlds in Rome featured female Chinese swimmers who were later found to be using performance-enhancing drugs. So the question on steroids appearing again in 2009 was raised. Fat Drew, that's his username, was one of the many who came to the Chinese defense, actually, saying, quote, "The Chinese beat the Americans in Beijing last year as well, with 3 of the 4 girls they used today. It's not 1994 anymore, and these girls didn't come out of nowhere to form this winning team. They've been on the international scene for many years." We appreciate all those comments. If you've got something to say about the World Championships or any other swimming topic, you can post it on our website's reaction time. Just click on the story, post your comments. You can also send us an email at mail@morningswimshow.com. And thanks to great storylines like Michael Phelps and the swimsuit controversy, swimming is mainstream in a non-Olympic year, with news articles and TV reports focusing on the sport in a way that's usually seen only during the Olympic Games. On Monday, I was a guest on ESPN's Outside the Lines, which I talked with host John Anderson and ESPN.com columnist Pat Forty about the World Championships. Here's the segment.
Swimming meets in non-Olympic years rarely make waves, unless you have Michael Phelps winning and losing and his coach complaining. Unless you have such an astonishing number of world records, it makes you wonder if the pool's too short. Unless there's nonstop talk about swimsuits and there's nary a calendar supermodel involved. The just completed World Championships in Rome had all of those things. Phelps winning 5 golds and a second-place silver, the fastest meet in history, and controversy over what the athletes were wearing. Phelps and his American teammates capped off the meet by setting a world mark in the 400-meter medley relay by more than 2 seconds. Phelps handled the butterfly leg for the U.S. Eric Shanto, swimming the breaststroke, stamped his comeback from testicular cancer by winning his first gold. Aaron Pearsall, David Walters, the other 2 Americans on the relay team that set the 43rd world record of the championships. Phelps responsible for 4 of those. He also hauled home half of the 10 gold medals by the men and women, one for the USA. He also became the first swimmer to break 50 seconds in the 100-meter butterfly when he won a Beijing rematch with Milo Cavich, who had to swallow some smack talk as well as Phelps' wake there. And returning now to talk about the waters of Rome, ESPN.com's Pat Forty, who, in addition to knowing much about football and stadiums, basketball gyms, he's an ace on barbecue joints and a man about the pool. Peter Busch writes for Swimming World magazine, reports for KPHO. Razor suits and backstroke are his business. Men, let us begin with Phelps, because for most folks, that's where swimming begins. Sure. Off 6 months vacation, 3 months suspension. Pat, how impressed should I be here?
Very impressed, I thought, for those very reasons. First of all, you know, a lot of guys didn't even come back and compete in the last year after the Olympics. Took a lot of time off. He did take time off, had some controversy, came with a slower suit after last year having the fastest suit in Beijing, overcame all of that stuff, and still, you know, 5 gold medals, multiple world records. I thought it was a spectacular meet for Michael Phelps.
Peter?
Well, I have to echo that. Very, very impressed. Phelps will be the first to tell you, and he's being honest, that he was not 100% at this meet. How could you be after taking 6 months off and only being in the pool for a few months? But I think Phelps did so well because he had that chip on his shoulder, the controversy about the bong and just the talk that he was in a slower suit. So I think this was just setting the stage for what will be another very impressive Olympics in 2012.
You bring up the picture, which can't be ignored. Where is Phelps then in rehabbing the reputation after the big week in Rome?
Well, I think he's doing pretty well. Michael Phelps is a genuinely honest guy. At least I think he comes off that way. So I think Phelps is doing just fine. He handled that situation correctly, in my opinion. He owned up to his mistakes, and he just said, look, you know, I'm human. And I think that's in some ways refreshing for an athlete to say that. But I think being that a fairly isolated incident, barring any other incidents like that in the future, and if he keeps swimming this quickly, that's what people will focus on.
Can he keep swimming this quickly without switching suits? That seemed to be quite the topic of conversation. His coach complained after he lost the first one, which sounded sort of petty. Pat, the suit thing, we can't ignore it, but what should I make of the record book now?
That's the problem. That's swimming's biggest problem, is the technology has outstripped any meaningfulness to the record book. And it's just, I think it's a shame, and I'm glad to see FINA's trying to put the genie back in the bottle now, John, and go back to a really very basic suit form starting in 2010. You know, I think that's going to help the sport going forward, but what it does is it leaves all these records that were smashed here and last year in Beijing and along the way, and you're wondering, you know, is it real? Are these guys really that fast, or how much is it these, you know, polyurethane space-age suits that are almost jet propulsion, it seems, in terms of smashing records? And I think that swimming got way too far ahead of itself, and now they're trying to scale it back.
Peter, why do I want the genie back in the bottle? I mean, golf is trying to rein in the ball and the driver, but that's sort of a land issue. The pool's not shrinking. It's the same size. Why do I care? What's the harm in having lower records?
Well, if you're a swimmer, because the sport lost a sense of its history, they took it too far. Not anyone in particular, but when you have pretty much every single world record has been set in either 2008 or 2009, it just, something doesn't seem right there. I mean, you've got records that were considered untouchable, you know, back in the 90s and earlier this decade, and they were wiped off the books, and so you've got to think it had something to do with the suit. There's no doubt that it has created unparalleled buzz around the sport, which can only be a good thing for swimming, but when you lose a sense of the history and just how great past performances were, that's really what this is all about.
Pat, quickly, Eric Chanteau overshadowed by Phelps, but how good is that story?
Oh, it was a tremendous story. I interviewed him at length in the spring, and, you know, he had really, I think, struggled after he had the testicular cancer. He swam in Beijing. He had the surgery after that, and I think he had a real kind of crisis moment there where he's like, gosh, do I really now kind of have to be a face of cancer survivorship? Do I have to deal with that and still pursue my goals? And I think he decided, with some help from his coaches, yes, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take that on. I'm going to keep swimming, and I'm going to speak out. You know, it was a great summation to his year cycle, I think, to see him win a gold medal in the World Championships. Very happy for him.
Peter Busch, Swimming World Magazine, our thanks to you. Pat Forty, you're excused to dash off for a couple of days on campus.
All right.
Our thanks to ESPN for allowing us to bring that to you today. And that is our news segment for today. We'll be back tomorrow with results from the first day at the U.S. Open. Thanks for watching again. I'm Peter Busch, reminding you to keep your head down at the finish.